Good evening and welcome to Burr News and Views coverage of the Smith South by-election. I'm your host, Don Burgess, and with me we have a very distinguished panel tonight, starting with Cheryl Packwood. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you, Don.
And from the OBA, Senator Dwayne Robinson.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And my good buddy, MP Chris Famous. Welcome, Chris.
Yes. Good evening, Dawn. Good evening, panelists, and most of all, good evening to the viewing public.
Okay, so we are waiting on election results, which should come in 3 counts tonight on the race to see who's going to replace Cole Simons in Smith South. And we have candidates Ben Smith for the OBA and Misha Fubler for the PLP. And Cheryl, since you're in the neutral corner tonight, why don't you tell me your take on what you see?
Well, first, I'd like to start with my condolences to the family of Sheila Burroughs. Sheila Burroughs was the wife of Reginald Burroughs, who was part of the founding and beginnings of the PLP. He goes all the way back, and he was quite a giant. And next to him stood another giant, which was his wife, Sheila Burroughs. And her passing has left quite a deep hole, and I'm very sorry for her family and friends. And I remember actually my parents, when we were all growing up, and spending many an evening talking and discussing with Reggie Burroughs and Mrs. Burroughs, and it was quite an informative and fascinating and wonderful time. My take tonight, I think that we pretty much know how this election is going to come out. I think the issue is whether the OBA loses ground to the PLP, or if you put it in reverse, whether the PLP gains ground in this election. I think that it would be really good, though, if we were talking, like it was almost if it was an inside politics show, where we were talking about the state of the government, the state of the economy, what's going on in Bermuda. This election, in many regards, leaves little to be discussed. It's what's going on outside of this election, and can we come together as a community and make our little island so much better.
Okay, so Dwayne, as Cheryl mentioned, that they expect the OBA to win this seat. She says there's not any; they don't expect it to be close. But is this the results tonight? Is it going to be measured in how well Ben Smith does compared to what Cole Simons has done in the past?
I think I believe that's true. For the OBA, we haven't looked to take the folks of Smith South in constituency 8 for granted. This was a chance for us to really kind of reintroduce ourselves as a party to the constituents of this particular constituency. So I do believe that for us it will be a test of how they receive the OBA as it is now versus how they received it in the past. So it's definitely going to be a measure of Ben Smith's margin of victory compared to that of Cole Simon. So I agree with that assessment. For us, it will also be a measure of whether or not the community has accepted the changes that we've made.
Okay. And Chris, what's your assessment on the evening?
Thanks again. Give me the question again so I can answer it properly.
Okay. So is tonight really going to be an assessment compared to what happened in the last election between Owen Darrell and Cole Simons? So do you think, like that's wrong and that Misha has a chance of winning this, or it's a measure of how much better he does than the last time out?
Well, this is what I would say. Elections are based off of relationships. Elections are based off of relationships. Elections are based off of people's, I guess you would say, historical voting patterns, right? So on one hand, we have historical voting pattern where this seat didn't start as an OBA seat; it was a UBP seat, right? Um, Jim Woolrich, Maxwell Burgess, and then it was handed over to Colonel Simons, who for the last 25 years has had this seat. So we know the results. We know that the best the PLP has ever done in that seat is, as you're showing now, 37% last time. But normally, as you could see, we trend around 25, 20. The lowest we went was 21%. The highest we went prior to 2020 was 37%. So we know the demographics heavily favor the OBA. So not only that, we didn't take that for granted, just like the OBA didn't take it for granted. We as the PLP have a philosophy that we knock on every door. We had a short period to do it, so some doors we didn't get to. So I personally apologize for the doors we didn't get to. But it's all about building a relationship, because win, lose, or draw, right? The PLP has to represent every Bermudian, and we have
Right.
to have a relationship with every Bermudian.
So I guess one of the questions is, it was a surprise in some quarters, Chris, that Owen Darrell didn't run in this seat since he did so well last time.
Mhm.
Although some people are finding Misha's very openness to be a breath of fresh air in politics. Can you give us some insight as to the thinking as to why Misha was chosen and maybe Owen didn't run in the seat?
Okay, so let's start with the first word in our name is, you can see behind us,
Mhm.
progressive, right? What that means is persons that come into this party and have worked their way up from just being a member, working on committees, so on and so forth. If they so desire to progress to be a representative of this party and they make the cut, then we put them out there. And sometimes you can be in, as a media host said, it may be an uphill battle, but it helps to progress that person in teaching them the rudiments of canvassing, the rudiments of building relationships. Now, as to Minister Darrell, as you know, Minister Darrell is the Minister of Youth, Culture, and Sport, no S. And according to our Westminster system, he would have had to step down from Senate, step down from that. And as you can see, he has done, since he has been that minister, he has made yeoman stride in his seat, not his seat, but in his portfolio. So we didn't want to disrupt that progress either. So it's all about bringing in new blood. And as you see, as Dwayne would know, Misha does not conform to any. You can't give Misha a script and say, "Yeah, just read this." Right? Misha has his own philosophies that has resonated with many persons in CA.
Okay, sort of like with Misha, my take on this could be incorrect, Dwayne, but it seems like with new leadership, the OBA seems a little bit more revitalized over the last few months. You seem to be out there in the public a lot more, um, speaking out. And how would you assess what's been going on since Jarian has taken over?
Well, I think it speaks to the rebuilding process that the OBA has been undergoing, and to thank the outgoing leader, Cole Simons, for being a steady hand in that regard, and Jarian has taken the baton and really run with it as far as galvanizing and motivating the members of the OBA. But it's a lot more rallying coming from the candidates and the new faces that we have in the room that are really pushing out that grassroots reconnection. We've accepted the faults and the fold ons that we had in the past and have made ourselves more grassroots connected to try and reconnect with our supporters and all of Bermuda, So I believe that you will see further revitalization after tonight, because the OBA is definitely prepared and ready to fight the next election, but not just to regain power for us, but we have faces in the room and new folks who wish to see Bermuda in a better state than it currently is. So I think that galvanizing force around new leadership has created a great monsoon of kind of forward momentum that we intend to capitalize on.
So, who would you say are some of the new faces that, when you speak to them, you get excited because of the new ideas they're bringing to the party?
Well, I would definitely say, Jeff Fiala is one. Tia Smith is another one. We have, Elizabeth Harvey is another one. It's a few faces. Sophia Tessitore, of course, the 21-year-old who is running where she lives against what a lot will call a giant of a politician. So we have a lot of folks who are coming in, who see the potential of the OBA and which direction it's moving in. So, I get galvanized when I see folks, and I'm a bit of a mid card and all. I've been in for uh, potentially 6 years. So, seeing the energy in the room now and the rebuilding of our branches, of our regionals, and our general plan and vision for Bermuda is very heartening. And I think that we will gauge tonight whether or not folks have responded to that on the doorstep.
Okay. So, Cheryl, hearing what both Dwayne and Chris had to say, do you have any insights or comments as to whether you agree with them or you take a slightly different view?
Part of me feels like the OBA is on life support. The other part is I want a strong opposition. I think with a strong opposition, you get you can hold the government in power more accountable. And right now, the PLP is almost a runaway government. I wish I like Misha Fogler a lot. I what I've seen and what I've read, I don't know him personally. Uh, he could be a great person to have in the House. And in some ways, I wish he was running in a district where he had a better chance. Time it's still to be seen whether the OBA can come off of life support and move on and do bigger and better things for the country, as opposed to just sort of hanging in there and barely making any headway or any noise even. And that's my feeling, which is why I come back to, since in many regards this, I don't even know if we can take from this, if the PLP gets 40%, say, in this election, whether that really is indicative, because we're not going to have the same turnout as you would have in a general election.
Right.
I think.
Sorry. I think Chris was talking earlier today. He said the turnout was really low. Chris, what did you estimate the turnout to be?
Not so much estimate, but our data indicates that we had 507 total voters, which is roughly, and the total amount of voters in C8 are 1,298 registered voters. So that would give us roughly a 40% turnout.
Okay, and we had some shots there of the polling station as people are waiting for the first count to come in, which should be hopefully in the next 10 to 15 minutes. So, with the low turnout, Dwayne, how do you think that's going to affect the results tonight?
Well, it's hard to gauge, being as though it is a by-election and they tend to have low turnouts. I guess it really falls down to which party was able to get more people out tonight. I believe that the OBA did an excellent job with Ben Smith, getting him to as many doorsteps as possible. And I think that you saw a coming together of the One Bermuda Alliance in canvassing the constituency. And I do reject the notion that we are on life support because, as you've seen, we have been an opposition that has been vocal at keeping the government accountable with depleted numbers. I mean, we know the reality. It's not a lot of us, but we are a caucus that is much larger than the 9 parliamentarians, and we have been proposing amendments, and we have been proposing various changes to legislation that's coming through. And I think people are resonating with seeing us doing the pop-ups and the blitzes and that grassroots stuff that the OBA really had an issue doing before because of the fact that we were recovering from a pretty bad election thrashing, which we all know is factual. But I believe where we are now, it's really going to come down to were we able to galvanize enough supporters and enough Bermudians in constituency 8 to tip the vote in our favor and to show a clear, strong majority victory, because that's also important.
Right. Do you think there was any disadvantage because when the nomination day was held, Ben was away and he wasn't here to canvass right at the start, or did the rest of the team, you feel, pitch in enough to make up that difference?
Well, I think it gave us a great opportunity to really test the new apparatus and the new machinery that we've galvanized around. So, obviously, Cole Simons, former leader for the UVA, has his prerogative of when he wants to, retire. And Ben Smith was away. He had done a lot of meets in his capacity as national swim coach. So, we realized that he needed that time to be with his family and to recharge and recuperate with his wife. So the One Bermuda Alliance team, stepped up and really started hitting those doors. And when we got the appointments of people who really wanted to speak to Ben Smith personally, he got right off the plane. He landed that Saturday and was out meeting with those people and has been hitting the doorstep right up until tonight, really. So.
Okay. Let's talk about a national issue at the moment. So a lot of people are still concerned about the cyber attack.
Dawn, can I address something?
Sure, go ahead.
Dwayne made a comment about the OBA has been proposing amendments and so on. The OBA has proposed very few amendments in the House. The OBA has brought zero bills to the House. When you look at the stuff that the OBA has put out for this by-election, there is not one solution to any of the current challenges this country meets, right? That's number one. Number two, Ben Smith himself had said that they're going to come up with a platform. They've run on zero platform in this by-election, right? If you look at all the social media is negative against the PLP, or negative, stirring up negativity, but they have yet to say anything about what they are going to do. So I don't know about this revitalize. They're just all they're doing is just stirring up the same ill.
Yeah, but Chris, to be fair, they're, like I said, they're barely in Parliament. They're barely there. How can they even say what they're going to do, and they couldn't even achieve it?
Well,
It'd be one thing to say it's one thing to say, like in the upcoming election in 2025, that this is what we intend to do as a government. Right now, it's really almost a stand-in seat. It's like I said, they're on life support, and they need to figure out how to get back in the game. And if they're going to lose the next election, at least they have put 12, 14 people in Parliament, so that at least they have more of a voice, and there's more meaning. And if there is a by-election, they have a chance to take on another seat or something. But right now, I'm not sure. What is Ben Smith's going to say? Oh, I'm going to we're going to increase the, decrease the debt, increase people's benefits. They can't they have no power. And I mean, it's not even like they're in opposition with 14 seats. They're in opposition with what, 6?
Well, I'd
I'm
like to
sorry.
address a few things because there was a few things that my colleague said that was very interesting. Number one, he said there were 0 bills put forward, and there was indeed a bill that was put forward by the Honorable Scott Perman when it came to equality, and
That
that
was not
bill
a
did,
bill. That was a workforce equity bill that had no teeth
you know,
whatsoever.
semantics, and we even tabled a amendment in Senate just recently. So I feel like it's very interesting, and we have to take the context of the House of Assembly is a representation of how the people felt in the past. So when you look at how people feel on the ground now, that is the measure of whether or not the One Bermuda
Dwayne,
Alliance.
that was not the statement. Don't try to pull a donkey. The statement was that the PLP, the OBA, in 3 years as opposition, call it 6 years as opposition, well, let's say 3 years. In 3 years as opposition, have put forth 0 bill. The bill that Scott put forward, the MP Scott Perrin put forward, was not a non-workable bill.
And you also have to take into account, because it's easy as somebody who is a part of the ruling government, who has civil servants and
You don't
assistants to help
you
them
have
draft.
Dwayne,
The
don't
OPA is
Dwayne,
majority
Dwayne.
volunteer
Okay,
organization, and we continue to put forth amendments. We continue to spend long nights drafting things ourselves and
Where
making
are they?
sure
Where are they,
that,
Dwayne?
first of all, famous, right? I have to let you know, to say that the OBA has no platform, to ask where it is when
Where's
we've
the
run
platform,
on
Dwayne?
similar things since our inception.
Where's the
Our
platform,
platform,
Dwayne?
we have a
Okay,
platform
let me go
from
online and look.
2020, right? And we're updating it now to
How did that work out, Dwayne?
be past current COVID stuff. So we have to make sure that the
So no
updating
plat-
of a
no
platform
nothing new in the
is
last
not the absence
nothing new
of
in
a
the
platform,
last 3 years.
okay.
because your
Chris, just
people
give him
likes
a chance to
quote
finish, and
his
then you can have your
mandate,
say.
right?
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. Dwayne, are you finished?
Well, I'm just saying we do have a platform. We're just updating that platform. We've stood on the same principles since we've been accepted, and we've always stood for fiscal prudence, transparency, immigration reform, real comprehensive immigration reform, not what the current government is proposing. We've
Let's
always
let's
stood on the same
let's talk about what
things,
the
and
OBA
our
wants for
platform
immigration,
is
Dwayne.
available. And when it's updated, we will roll it out to the public. But the
Okay.
government of the day should not be relying on the opposition to give solutions to the current ills. You guys should be producing solutions and not looking at the OBA. If you don't have enough seats to get solutions done now, how many seats do you need, famous?
That wasn't the question, Dwayne. But we understand why you're upset. Okay. Don't
No,
your
I'm not.
attitude, man.
I'm not upset. I'm
Okay,
just saying.
Dwayne, Senator Robinson. So just to your point, you said it's available, but it's not rolled out yet. So how can to Chris's point, how can the public access that?
No, I said that we have a platform from 2020 that is available, but we
Okay.
are updating that platform now to reflect the current state of Bermuda post COVID. So it is the OBA solutions, and what we stand for is readily available on a Google search, but we wanted to update that. So when we roll it out, we will make sure to get MP Chris Famous's opinion on our solutions and whether or not he may adopt some, because his government surely needs some.
But Dwayne, they don't have to. They are a runaway government, and your ability to push anything is minimal at best. But what's the next question? What's our national problem?
Well, okay, so like right now, the cyber attacks affected a lot of people. Um, People are upset. Like I went to the post office today, or not today, but earlier in this week to go pick up a package, and it took me about 15, 20 minutes to do everything through the My US because the system is down. So like me personally, but other people have had to go pick it up. I know.
We have a first count, Don.
Beg pardon?
We have a first count coming in.
Okay, first count. Okay, Misha Fubler for the PLP 56 to Benjamin Smith for the OBA at 104. So that's about 33% to 67% there. Chris, we'll start with you. What are your
Wait,
impressions?
can I ask a question? Chris,
Sure.
how many people did you say showed up at the poll?
According to our data, it was a total of 507.
So two, they hit 250 or so, then it's a
Two, 250,
255.
260 for argument's sake.
254.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Chris, what's your initial impression?
On the numbers,
Yes. So it's about 67% to 33% at the moment.
well, as I stated earlier, we knew we have did this from the get-go, knowing that this is an uphill battle, right? But we didn't take the position that, okay, they're just going to win this, so let's not do anything. For the last 2 months, and I give the OBA credit, for the last 2 months, both teams have been out there assiduously every day, whether it be on the door, on calls, connecting with people. So some people, if you look at the age demographics, you're talking about 50% of those in C8 are over the age 65, seniors. Generally, seniors tend to be very calcified in their political choices, right? For various, whichever way they vote, it's a reason. My mother's generation is not going to vote any way but PLP. There's other people in her generation who's never going to vote anything but OBA. So we knew that from the get-go. We went to as many doors as possible. The challenge for us was that Misha has a full-time job. He's a family man, so he may not have been able to get out as much as others. But we have a team that as you know, we work as a team, and we try to reach as many persons as possible. Those that we met, they gave us a earful some. So the results that we're seeing here is not so totally surprising.
Right. And Dwayne, your take?
Well, I think obviously it's very early to tell, but the first count is very reassuring to the One Bermuda Alliance that folks have indeed responded to Ben Smith's message and his solutions for their constituency. So I look forward to seeing the numbers continue to trend in this direction, and to me, it's a very great first count for my colleagues.
So with the number at 67%, it's in between the 63% from the 2020 election and the previous numbers of 71 or 73% from the ones before that. So not as good as the last time out, but not as bad as the previous ones. Okay. I'll try to get to this again. So the cyber attack on Bermuda has affected a lot of people. I know several people who didn't get paid because of the accounting systems that were affected or whatever happened. Anyway, they didn't get paid. Chris, how's the government working to try to solve this matter for the people of Bermuda?
Well, as you know, the Westminster system is such that the MPs are not informed as much as cabinet, and cabinet has quote unquote secrecy, right? Secrecy. So we are not informed of everything what's going on. We know that phone lines have been restored, some emails have been restored, different things have been restored. So the government, not so much the elected government, but the civil servants, the technical persons are working towards getting things back to where they should be. That's the best I can tell you.
Okay.
But isn't the whole problem with secrecy, especially on this issue, you're being accused of by certain OBA personas, in particular
Well,
Michael Dunkley?
the same OBA persons, Michael Dunkley in particular, who couldn't reveal the facts of the airport deal. I don't take anything he says.
The
No,
airport deal was published,
no, it wasn't Dwayne. The
and it's
fact,
independent. It
Dwayne,
was an
Dwayne,
independent.
Dwayne,
Wait, I told him when he was interrupting you to give, and
Dwayne,
then you can jump in
Michael
after he finishes.
Dunkley was the premier during the whole airport deal fiasco. Michael Dunkley was the premier who knew beforehand that the OBA was going to try to unleash pathways to status. He did not tell the Hill cabinet. He did not tell the Hill caucus, and he definitely didn't tell the public. So I don't to Professor Sherrills, I don't think you can really equate the two because Michael Dunkley has a pendency, that's not the word, tendency to just want to say anything online just to feel relevant.
Chris, I'm not equating the two. I just said there's been an accusation that
Mhm.
the government has been secretive about what they're doing, how they're going to fix this, what's being done. Um, when will it all be? When will we be all back to normal? Is our public data safe? All of that. I'm not equate. I am far from equating the airport deal with cybersecurity. I
No,
actually
no,
think they're
no. What I
it's
said is
apples and oranges, quite frankly.
what I said is Michael Dunkley was the premier when the most biggest secrets were being held from the people of Bermuda. So I'm simply saying that I don't take anything what he says seriously when it comes to this. He's just looking for media likes. That's Michael Dunkley's forte.
Well,
Okay, so but what's going on though in terms of is there? I mean, the public, I guess there is a sense that the public wants to be enlightened and know that I mean, in particular, I think the public would be interested in things like their pensions, the social insurance, health insurance, all of those issues that are related to individual um, people that are under government systems.
Well, as the premier and others have stated, at any time comes, the details will be given out. It would be premature of them to give out these sort of details, whether it be to the caucus or to the general public, until things are sorted out. That's the best I can tell you.
well, what I will say is it's been conversation about what can the OBA do with its diminished numbers, but it does seem as though the government is somewhat concerned because we did wait uh, for several press conferences before we spoke up to give that opportunity, and we got a statement on an MTA from the deputy premier, whereas questions were answered.
You
And
might want to stop there.
I think that
You
the
might want to
goal
stop
is
there,
right
Dwayne.
that you want to table something in Parliament for discussion, so that questions can be asked, not sensitive questions on how you are going against the cyber attack to tip off the people that you are battling, but just so that Parliament is able to ask those questions pertinent to what has been asked by Don and Ms. Packwood tonight. And I also
Mm.
think it's very interesting that we brought up the report because an independent review was done of that deal, and so was a report done by the Progressive Labor Party. And I feel like if there was things in there that they felt could have been utilized for political gain, they would have released that report. But on to that, I think an independent inquiry into the cyber attack is a reasonable thing. It's not asking for the sensitive details of what is happening, but whether or not people's personal information has actually been compromised, and whether or not the government's operating at the capacity of which it's saying it is.
Dwayne, that's just maybe you didn't get the memo, but the OBA opposition leader was invited to a meeting last week, Wednesday, to sit down and speak with the technical officers about this entire situation.
And
Maybe
and
maybe you didn't get the memo.
does that negate the need for the public to hear the information, or is it just the opposition leader that should? When you ask things in Parliament, right? You're asking it to put it on a Hansard for public record. So whether the meeting or not with the premier and the opposition happened, it's no excuse not to answer questions in the house for the people who are listening
Dwayne,
at home.
Dwayne, there's parliamentary question and answers. Your team has enough ability to ask as many questions as they want when the House resumes in November.
In November.
Mhm. But your leader was invited by the government to come and speak directly with the technical officers versus speaking with another minister. He was invited to speak to them. Did he not tell you?
Oh, I know. And it doesn't negate the point that the people's business should be conducted in the people's house, MP Famous. And it's not about whether or not the leaders of the parties have spoken, Matt. It's about transparency. And I understand that word's a little tricky for the Progressive Labor Party, but it's about transparency for the people who voted and elected those officials. And they want to know whether or not their data has been compromised. And it's not about um,
Dwayne,
political
Dwayne,
points. It's about
Dwayne,
folks
if
knew if their
Dwayne,
data is safe or not. It's that simple.
Dwayne, if your political leader was invited to speak to the technical officers, he could ascertain that the answers to those questions.
So
Would he not?
what you're suggesting is that the opposition leader give a briefing on whether or not the Bermuda government's data was compromised, or do you think that should come from your leader, who happens to be the premier of the country?
Dwayne, let me end this. Last week, your team made a claim that they had no one has contacted them. They had no way to learn about what's going on. And when Minister Vance Campbell came on, he categorically laid out the date and time when your team was invited to come to speak with the technical officers. And then one of your former leaders had to almost retract his statement. But
What he
Dawn, let's
did
move on.
was what he did was clarify
I
that it
can
hadn't
I
been
just
tabled in the
suggest
house, not that we hadn't been that we hadn't been contacted. Let's be clear, and it's printed. So just be careful about misleading.
Okay. So first of all, I just want to say I appreciate you guys not talking over each other. And we can have a mostly civilized discussion on these issues. Um, Chris, from the PLP standpoint, what do you think is going to be um, the main issue facing Bermuda over the next 2 years as we lead up to the next election?
The main issue that's been there all along, cost of living. We heard on the doorstep, Dwayne hears it. Healthcare costs, Balco is the news hotspot, grocery costs, so on and so forth, which doesn't escape any government anywhere in the world. These costs, cost of living costs going up through outside issues. Right now, domestically, there are some things that we had some folks who were, I guess you would say, up in arms about education. All right. And then you have the issue with taxi drivers. You have issues with, I shouldn't say we have issues, but there's an issue with taxi drivers. There's an issue with, as someone just said, sugar tax, taxi drivers, farmers, fishermen. So it's a myriad of things. But we have to deal with it. That's why we were elected. We weren't elected for just skate,
Yeah. You mentioned four different groups there between the schools, the education, the fishermen, the farmers, and the taxi drivers. If you had to pick one of those four that you think is the easiest to solve, which would you pick and why?
Well, the easiest to solve, it depends. Let's take education, which is the most important, all right? We have to downsize the amount of public schools. Low birth rate, people send their children to other schools. The list goes on. So it'll be financially imprudent of us to keep 18 to 20 schools open when we can do the same work with 10 schools. Now, one school in particular, well, all schools have historical value to persons, right? One school in particular has galvanized people up the west, right? And in my opinion, the solution does not elude us. It can be solved. And so I would tackle that first because, as I said, politics is about relationships. It's not about technocratic babble, right? People not interested in hearing about, oh, this, that, and the other. They want to know, though you're appealing to their sensitivities, right?
Right. And I think it would be fair to say that most of the people that are making the complaints about the West End School in Somerset would tend to be PLP supporters. And,
Yeah,
and
I think you will win that bet.
so you know, it seems like these conversations could have been had and that problem could have been resolved unless there's two sticking points that nobody's going to budge from.
Well, what I would say is that at the end of the day, right, the PLP answers to the people, right? So that, I will leave it at that. I don't want to preempt anything from anyone else.
Okay. So, Dwayne, what do you think is the pressing issue over the next 4 years? Or
I,
next 2 years, sorry, before the next general election?
yeah, I agree with MP Famous as far as the issues he's laid out, and I believe that cost of living is, as usual, at the forefront of most folks, along with healthcare and education. That's what we hear on the doorstep whenever we knock, wherever we knock. So, the One Bermuda Alliance understands that these are not easy things to tackle, but those are definitely going to be the pressing issues, and it comes back to the fact that we have a population that is in decline and is aging, and we have to make that our priority because most of these issues tend to stem from that particular thing when you talk about healthcare and education and cost of living.
Okay, we have a second count coming in. All right, second count, Misha Fubler, 104 votes, and Ben Smith, OBA, 216 votes. And if Chris, what you said earlier tonight about 507 total votes, that would mean that Ben Smith is past the post. So we'll wait for an official count
Mhm.
later. And again, it's trending about 67% to 33, maybe 32% right now.
Mhm.
So, Senator Robinson, you're looking at the next count here. How are you guys feeling?
Well, we're feeling grateful. Obviously, it's a seat that has trended our way, so we understand that it's not necessarily going to be moving the dial to have a victory here, but it is something that we take very serious when it comes to reconnecting and rebuilding the party. So I think it's a great showing to see that we are indeed trending the way that was anticipated. But obviously, it's always going to be more work to done and to do. And as Ben Smith stated in his interview a little bit earlier, you know, the door knocking must continue. It cannot stop here tonight. So I look forward to seeing what the new incumbent does pass tonight.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned door knocking, and I know, like for a lot of people, if they don't see their MP on their door, or the candidate from the other party on the door, they feel ignored. Now, I happen to live in with Derek Burgess as my MP, and I can count on seeing him 3 or 4 times during the year. Um, but at least and I've lived in this house for 20 years now, and I've probably had OBA knock on my door maybe 3 times in 20 years. So is the party going to be more involved in going that way to get out to the people's homes and speak to the people on the doorsteps?
Absolutely. I mean, it's what our leader stated at the beginning of this election when it was called is that we will take no seat for granted, and we intend to contest all 36 constituencies. So it's going to be a real concerted push for our candidates to get out in the community and for us to continue to release you know, well documented folks to go into these constituencies and really connect with people. So it is going to be a concerted focus of leadership to improve our ground game. And you're seeing the green shoots of that in constituency 8, where we have now employed that tactic, and it is showing results.
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot a bit because last election,
Can I before you
go
put me
ahead.
on the spot? This whole thing about the schools and closing the schools and not enough. There's a low birth rate and so forth. It goes to the much bigger issue of we're not renewing our population. If we're not renewing our population, we're not able to support our economy, our people, and until we come to grips with that very real reality, um, I call the OBA on life support, but I would say Bermuda is going to be on life support pretty soon as well. Um, we have a major issue in the fact that our birth rate is so low and we are not renewing our population.
As we've seen with the schools and the aging populations up to about 20, close to 25% over the age of 60. Um, but I want to put you on the spot because last election you actually ran for the FDM, and are you going to be running this next time? And no, and do you think the FDM is going to be, or is the FDM is not on life support, but it's buried?
It's buried. um, you know, it is hard to be a party and not in power at all, like not even one or two people. There's no impetus. There's nothing that can support you. Um, but I think it was a group of people that didn't necessarily all agree on one theme. It was a movement. It wasn't a party. And so to the extent they were making a statement, and to the extent that they didn't necessarily agree on, they didn't come together on policy and belief. So to that extent, they're not going to stay together. And I had a blast. I have to tell you, when I ran in 2020, I had so much fun. I mean, meeting all the people, talking to them, election day, watching democracy in action, being there, counting the votes. It 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 was a brilliant experience, and I wouldn't give that up for the world. And it was very interesting because when the results came out, everybody was like, oh, she's going to be so. I was smiling and hugging everybody. I was so excited. I just thought it was phenomenal. Um, but I want Bermuda, and we need to recognize that, yes, we've got a high debt. We've got an economy in trouble. The finances are, they would be difficult for any party. So you can argue between yourselves, Dwayne and Chris, but it's a sore situation, and one of the basic fundamental problem is we don't have enough people. Unless our population increases somehow, some way, I don't know how we're going to make it quite out of any of the issues that are facing us.
Chris, going to the population issue and the aging population, I know I spoke to a couple of my former students over the last month, and one says that they're getting ready to move to the UK. Another one saying they're going to they're moving to Canada. They're just waiting on their work visa to go there. How can we keep our young people here rather than them pursuing opportunities overseas?
I think I have two of my children live in England, and not because they couldn't get a job or not because the parent is in any financial distress or anything of that nature. We have to accept that people are moving away for more than one reason. It cannot simply be economics, because the reality is a cost of living crisis in England, right? So it's not as if they're going to England and the roads in London are paved with milk and honey. Now, what I would say to the whole immigration and population thing, yes, it's a reality. we need to increase our population, increase our working population primarily. And that is going to come about by relaxation of some previous immigration policies or legislation, yes, but we cannot relax it to the point that Bermudians are now the minority in our own country, as seen in Cayman Islands, Virgin Islands, Turks and Caicos Islands, because you may solve one problem as far as having your population, but then you now displace your native people, if that's maybe not the right term. But in each of those islands, we've seen what granting mass status has done to the native population, and it's caused Caymanians, Virgin Islanders, and Turks and Caicos Islanders to emigrate to England as well. So, proposing mass status isn't the answer. We have to find a balance with our working population without displacing our own people. And part of just not displacing our own people is providing housing, which the government has embarked on, which is kind of should have did earlier. But that's one of the realities. You're never going to see the cost of chicken drop down. You're never going to see the cost of eggs drop down. Anybody who tells you that, you need to don't believe them. So I would say we have to be realistic and we have to have balance.
Now, to you,
Chris,
go ahead, Cheryl.
it's not about giving status away. I was the first one of the whole status bill that Michael Fahey proposed was a disaster. That's not, you can't change the population or the demographics of a population overnight like that bill proposed. But somehow we have to come to terms with immigration in terms of people coming in to create jobs, to create businesses, because the more businesses that are created, the more jobs there are for locals, the more housing there will be, and it's a build-on effect. The more taxes that go into supporting social insurance and the various benefits and so forth. And I'm sorry, but cutting the government civil service is not the way to handle that, which is what some people suggest. And, you know, Max, I saw the comment from someone about mass exodus. Of course, there's always all kinds of reasons why people leave. Nobody just leaves for one particular reason or the other. But if we are having a mass exodus of people and of young people, that's less people we have in our population to support our economy. And it's a problem, and we have to come to terms with it.
Let me say this before Dwayne chips in. The best litmus test, go during canvas and you'll see if there's a mass exodus, right? Because if there was a mass exodus, we would have empty houses all around this country. We do not have empty houses. We are short of houses, and it's not simply because of Airbnb. When we canvas, Dwayne is an honest guy, he will tell you most of the Bermudians that are on the brothers list are still there. So, I mean, physically there. So when people say mass exodus, I'm not saying people haven't left, but when you use the word mass exodus, that's not completely true.
Well, it's hyperbole.
I'm not into the point of mass exodus. I'm talking about low birth rate.
No,
if we have 400 and something people born per year, we're not renewing our population, period.
And if every your master, you know this, every G20 country has a low birth rate. England has a low birth rate.
I know
US
that.
has a low birth rate.
Japan
Canada
has
a
a
low birth. Everybody has a low birth rate. Why? I don't answer to as to why, but it's not as if Bermuda is in this alone. That is
and
what
they are having serious problems, and they are having to deal with this and consider what to do. The U.S. has gone in the opposite direction of shutting their borders, no immigration. They need immigration. What's interesting is Sweden, Germany opened their borders to immigrants and refugees, knowing full well that if they increase their populations, their economies are going to do better. And so, because they know they're not renewing their population through births.
Well, I think what we're seeing is a global competition for workforce and labor, and I I want to first of all just kind of refute the aspect of uh, the former bill that the OBA put forward as being a way to change the demographics of the country overnight. I mean,
But that's what it did,
it
Dwayne.
was mainly for folks who had been on the island and had contributed for many years. And it's one thing to ask people to come here and to spend money and build a family here, but the status doesn't transfer down, and you're not allowing them to vote or do anything like that. And I think without rehashing the past, we now in the present have to make Bermuda more competitive as far as attracting the global market that is labor. It's true that Bermudians are not only leaving because of economic situations, but I believe that it should be our main goal to make sure that if they are immigrating for economic reasons, that we address what government is mainly responsible for fostering. And I believe that the best way is to, make sure that our education and our healthcare are up to snuff and are competitive. So when people come here, they say, oh, I can raise a family here. I can also insure my children and myself without, causing an arm and a leg. And I think at the end of the day, we know that we have 8,000, 9,000 hurl of workers in our economy right now. And whether or not, houses are full or not, that is concerning. And I think that that is where we need to make sure that we employ ourselves and to try and entice people to come here without granting them status. I mean, you see how that's playing out in other countries. If we aren't allowing people to come here and to create their own version of the Bermudian dream, and live as equal citizens, then we may go down the path of Japan or South Korea, where you have one ethnic group and nobody's really coming in and mixing, and that has caused a stagnation in their economy and their economic growth. So I think we can find a workable solution between the parties to not only replenish the Bermudians here with folks who wish to get status, but also to entice all our Bermudians to return. And the best way to entice them to return is the same way we want to entice other global laborers, is to make sure that they can raise their families here, that they can have a quality education, and they can get a good job. If people
May I
can
speak?
if people can earn money, I believe that they will come back for an economic opportunity or an opportunity to start a business.
May I speak to
That's
that point real
simplistic.
quick, John?
It's not dealing with the problem of the declining population, the declining growth. But go ahead, Chris.
All right, so let me bounce off of Dwayne. He's correct in some aspects, right? We need to entice our people to stay here. We need to entice our people to return here. So here's three of the fundamental things that we are doing. Number one, Bermudians that have gone abroad and had children abroad, those children are eligible for Bermuda status. All right, that's number one. Number two, we need housing. As chairman of the Bermuda Housing Corporation for 1 year, I can tell you the hardworking staff, many Bermudian contractors over the last year have created housing for 10 housing units. We have way more to go, but we have to create that housing because we know in the private sector, they are going to charge whatever they wish. The government has to step in and provide not give free housing, but housing not below market rate. That's number three. Number two. Number three, Jason Hayward has proposed not only proposed bringing in 8,000 new workers over the course of time, but more importantly, he has proposed more financial aid for, or I shouldn't say financial aid, but for those with children in daycare, you now have expanded the net of who can apply for daycare. Because if I see that, okay, if I have a child here, I'm going to pay I don't know, $1,500 a month for not child support, for daycare. Well, I'm not having no child. But if I see the government is going to assist me, then I might be more inclined to have a child or know that the child that I have is being assisted by the government. So I agree with Dwayne. It can never be just one silver bullet. It has to be a multiple things for the people in Bermuda to say, well, look, times are hard, but whoever's the government is assisting me to stay here and raise my family here.
I remember, like, I spoke with Cornell Riley um, after the pandemic the next year, because some people were expecting there to be lots of babies born after we went down on lockdown for a month, and it turned out to be the opposite was true. The number of births actually went down, and Cornell was talking about when people are uncertain about their future, they are less likely to have children because they don't want to bring them into an uncertain financial responsibility, you
Mhm.
know, and add that onto them. So I know the PLP have done something with the child care, but also with a lot of people, and I'm in that boat too. Their parents are older and now need financial assistance in dealing with their in senior care. And Chris, if you just want to speak a little bit to that
For the
about
senior,
what for senior care, a little bit more for those who are in senior homes.
um, so yes, the on the same Jason Hayward, who some people love to vilify, they there has been an increase. We have a final count.
Count three is coming in.
Okay. So there has been an increase in allowance for seniors on financial aid in nursing homes. So, in other words, if your family couldn't afford to uh, caregiver and you're in a nursing home, then the government is increasing that allowance paid to the nursing home, or whatever term you want to use for that senior. So we have to do it at the front end and the back end. This is what you call social, I won't say engineering, but reacting to our social realities. We have less children, we have to entice more people to have more children, and we have to there's the seniors that we are entitled to be taken care of. We have to take care of them so they can live in dignity.
So we're just waiting for the third count to come in. We have word that been announced they've finished counting for these numbers. And as you can see, like Ben Smith's lead from the first and the second count stayed about the same percentage. We're not off the screen, so maybe there's a little hiccup. And there we go. Final count. Um, Ben Smith, 344 votes, and Misha Fubler, 136, which increases the percentage of just quickly, it's roughly about 500. So Misha got somewhere around 27, 28%.
480.
So, uh, well,
For
to
80,
the yeah, to the victors belong the spoil. So,
let's
Dwayne,
see
do you
the
want to,
spoil ballots.
how many spoiled
How
ballots?
many spoiled ballots were
No,
there?
I'm saying that if we had in our system 507 voters and the final count is showing 480, that means
480,
there was maybe 20 something spoiled ballots.
Mhm. Which
27.
which would show a small amount of people um, who are dissatisfied with either choice.
That's
Right.
5%, Don.
Okay, more than a low number, but 5%. Um,
Well, Spoiled
So
ballots doesn't necessarily mean some. It could be any reason why it's spoiled.
yeah,
They could have not be within the lines and score a spoiled ballot.
okay. Although 27 is pretty high for, if I recall correctly from looking at the last election, there weren't too many that were that high. So, Dwayne, I'll give you a chance to talk first about the result, if this is the final number.
Well, if it is the final number, I think it goes to show that the work is being done. But I think it's a very crucial part here, which is voter apathy, and I think we as folks who are politically involved in both parties have to realize that if we have a population of folks of Bermudians who do not have an interest in voting, then that is something that I think both parties need to collaboratively address, because it goes to show a wider dissatisfaction. And I think that Ben Smith in this seat will be, a great step for the OBA to try and remedy that and re-engage voters into our process, because that's where you get the new leadership. That's where you get future politicians. So, it's definitely something for us to take into account. But I think this pretty clear victory here in the 6 weeks that Ben had to introduce himself to the constituents of 8 is something that he should celebrate.
Okay, so while we're still waiting for this to be official, Chris, your take on the voting tonight?
As predicted, we ensured that we maintained our numbers, which is first of all, the first rule is to maintain and maybe increase your numbers. As Dwayne said, yeah, ban did make itself available, right? But the point is that it wasn't as if this was not. It wasn't as if he was making himself available to people who have never voted OBA in their life. So that's like it's almost the reverse. Dwayne would remember when he ran in his first by-election in C-17. Jason Hayward made himself available. Jason Hayward was actually sick, right, for the first few weeks of that by-election, and the numbers still remained the same. We kept our numbers. It's some seats we know are gonna go certain ways. That's the way it is. Unless there's a massive change in boundaries or change in the demographics within those boundaries, some seats there's margin for error, but they're gonna remain the same for the most part.
Right. Cheryl, what do you think about the result tonight?
It was what I expected from the beginning. And which is why from the very beginning I said, let's talk about other issues more pressing for Bermuda. This was to be expected.
So
But
we're go ahead. Sorry.
also, let's remember, in all by-elections, the turnouts are generally lower than. Sorry, all by-elections generally the turnouts are lower than general elections. Don't ask me the psyche of why, but that's just the reality.
Well,
And
it's
which is why I'm not sure that it's indicative when we were talking about whether there's an increase in percentages or one way or the other. I'm not sure that that's indicative today of this time of what it means for either party.
well, I
I
think
think that the
it
OBA still remains on life support, and I think that the PLP is still a runaway government.
I think what it shows is the fact that as my esteemed colleague likes to remind the One Bermuda Alliance, that it was our voters that did not come out. And I think what it's showing now is that we have rekindled that connection with the voters to return to that percentage point compared to 2020. And I think it shows a resurgence of us, though it is a seat that we have had. The numbers trend in a certain way in a by-election shows that it's fruit there for us to continue to recover. So I think it is indicative of where Bermuda is, and obviously we hope to continue that trend.
Now,
What is the percentage to me?
I believe Don said it
Isn't
earlier.
Don the mathematician here?
Well, roughly, just looking at the numbers, basing it off of 500, the and counting the spoiled ballots, it's about 68% to 27%.
So, Dwayne, have you looked at the numbers for C8 traditional numbers?
Well, according to 2020, that percentage is lower than what
No, I said traditional numbers, Dwayne.
traditional numbers as far as what we originally get. I think we're measuring based off of recovery from 2020. So we're
No,
looking at we
see, hurry,
we wanted to beat
Dwayne,
63%, and
Dwayne,
we did.
Dwayne, I asked you a direct question. What are the traditional numbers for C8?
I don't have both top of my head.
They're right there. They were right there, Dwayne.
They just came. They were right there. It's trending the same. You know, it used to be in this early low 70%. It dipped down to 67%. I'm not sure that this really. I don't think that this election says anything in
Well,
that regard.
it shows that it was an increased percentage for the OBA and a decreased percentage for the PLP. Whether we want to say it's scientific or not, it's not a scientific outlook, but it is something that we can take to continue to be built.
Yeah,
But
but Dwayne, I don't think, I think because it's a by-election and you don't have the numbers that you would have normally in a full election, you can't really read that much into it. The fact that it's 67% this time as opposed to 63% in 2020, I'm not sure
What
that can really tell you
are we
anything.
still live? What was the
Yes.
numbers? What was the numbers in 2012 when the OBA won? Percentage.
It's like 73% or something. 70,
73%.
2012, 73,
Mhm.
74.
So the very best year for the OBA, so you had 74%, correct?
about that, yep,
What's the percent right now?
67. And I think that it's like I said, it's
All right,
not a
couldn't hear
direct
you.
science.
I
It's not
couldn't
a
hear you.
correct science.
It's not a correct science. Okay.
No, I'm saying it's not an exact science as to how the general will go, but it's showing that we are reconnecting and trending in the right direction. Now, obviously, we will need a general election to see how things pan out, but I don't think that it's to dismiss, what has happened here in C8.
I think it just
All right,
means
Dwayne.
that you've kept a seat that you've always had.
Well, I feel like if the PLP had managed to overturn this seat, my colleague would probably be jumping from the ceiling saying, "Look, look, da 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 da," and
Yes, he would be.
nobody would be
And we
saying
wouldn't.
that it was a by
No,
election and it's
no,
not
Dwayne.
general.
Let me tell you straight. Somebody said, what if we win?" I said, "I'll be the first one read street with banker boxes because to help you all pack up." Right? Now, let me say this categorically, and I say this with no reservation, right? The OBA has a new leader. The OBA has new faces. The OBA has a new, I would say new, but have adopted the PLP canvassing strategy, right?
Uh, Not quite, but okay.
I mean, canvas, the OBA never canvassed on Sundays before. Stop it. So,
It's PLP.
so my point is this, sir. Yes, there is some new, but the core philosophy remains the same, right? So some things that you see on the front are new. Yes, no one, Jarian is a new face. Ban, however, is not a new face. So why wasn't a new face allowed to run in C8?
We go through a process and the candidate select committee decides and the branch ratifies that and the branch accepted Ben Smith as their candidate and they are happy to have him and it is about also making sure that you utilize these situations since we do have only 6 seats that we utilize it to get people in that are experienced. We have new faces that are running in seats that are very winnable and they have a strong chance of being elected in a general.
Okay, all right.
So if we don't count the spoiled ballots, of the 480 votes cast, the OBA had 71.67%.
And what was
So
it in
I don't.
2012 when they had the best year?
Well, I think it wasn't 2012, but it was close. It was 73.7.
No, 2012 was the best year, right?
Well, 2003 they had 73.84, slightly a little bit more.
All right, so cool.
Right. So we just had mentioned the general election, and the OBA have a new leader to lead them whenever that election is held over the next couple of
That's
years.
not quite true, Ben, because the what seems to be the newest oldest MP said that his putting his hat in had said that he's putting his hat in the ring for leadership as well.
Oh, I thought he said he wasn't ruling it out. I thought that's what the phrase was.
No, Ben Smith is on record as saying that he is not ruling himself out of leadership. And let's remember, the OBA has yet to have an internal election to elect a new leader. So,
Well, look at you, MP. You stood on the House floor and said how obsessed the OBA is with the PLP's leadership, and now you're insinuating things based off of the Royal Gazette, which you don't tend to be so fond of.
no, I didn't. I'm not insinuating, number one, and number two, I'm speaking facts.
There has been no official bid for leadership as of yet. I mean,
Okay.
everyone has the democratic right to do so. I mean, if he did choose to do that, it is within his right. But
Okay.
there's nothing guaranteed as of yet.
Yeah, I think because I always think politicians are sometimes a little bit tricky in the way they couch their words. So he didn't say he was exactly that he was going to run that, but he wasn't ruling it out. But along those lines, Chris, we know David Burt has said several times that he's not going to run as in the next general election. That he will.
No, that's not what he said. He said he is not going to run for leader again.
Yeah, but there was an article in the Bermudian, the last issue, in which he was asked that question, and he said that, and if this is correct, on their magazine, said that he was going to step down, allow somebody else to take the reins, and stay in the seat until the general election, and allow somebody else to come in and run.
I'll be interested in seeing that article.
Okay. All right. But in any event, there will be a new leader. That's the main point. So
New leader of what?
the PLP for the next election.
As I said, I'll be interested in seeing that article.
Okay. I think
He made that statement.
So I'm asking for the article that says David Burt is going to step down before the next election.
Okay, so Royal Gazette, October 19th, 2022, commits to stepping aside in 2026, but insists he will be no lame duck leader.
2026, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next election has to be before 2026, correct?
Well, it has to be called before.
He has to call the election before 2026.
Mm-hmm. All right, so.
But the article goes on to state that, he promised his wife that he'd spend more time with the family and commit to them.
Well, I would strongly suggest you have a BNV with the premier so he could give you clarity on his statement, because this will be a first for me to hear that he said it's stepping on before the next election.
Okay, so back to the results. We were still waiting for it to give us the final result.
So just for the historical purposes, as we know, the ballot boxes, there's one ballot box. The ballots go in all day long, right? So what you tend to see in Bermuda elections is that OBA supporters traditionally come out very early in the morning, midday, then it starts to taper off. PLP voters tend to come out midday and then after work. That in itself tells a story. But so when you look at the first count, second count, third count, what you see happening is the first count tends to be when the last set of people have come in. The second count tend to be the people from midday, and then the first count tend to be the third count tend to be the persons who came early in the morning. So it follows the trend as we already know, right?
Right. And two, I would have to say, like, the weather wasn't particularly when I knocked off work this afternoon. The weather was really windy and kind of raining very hard. So some people might have been discouraged to go to the polling place if they were on a bike. Um, I mean, it wouldn't have changed the result for tonight, but it would have decreased the vote count, I'm sure.
Mm.
Yeah. So we talked about Senator Owen Darrow earlier, the Minister for Youth, Sport, and Culture, and he didn't run in this seat. Chris, do you happen to know that he will be running in the next election and where he might run?
I can't answer for anyone else but myself. I know I am running the next election. And I'm pretty sure Dwayne is running in the next election. But what I will say about Minister Darrell is that he has, through his ministry, has shown that he is more than capable to not only be a representative of the people, but on a constituency level, but on a national level. So that would put him in good stead coming into the next election.
Now, under the PLP, if the party, oh, here we go.
5 seconds.
Good evening, everyone. In Constituency 8 this evening, we had a total, including the advanced votes and the incapacitated votes, we had a total of 627 ballots cast, and the totals were as follows. For Nisha Fabla, 167 votes, and for Benjamin Smith, 457 votes, and we had 3 rejected ballots. So congratulations to both candidates, and especially to Mr. Benjamin Smith for being elected. Everyone have a great evening.
You guys good? Would we, are we able to ask questions of these gentlemen?
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
How does it feel to have gone into London?
Amazing. But the work begins now. So the first thing that I want to say is thank you to my opponent for running a very clean race. I want to thank my team behind me that is working extremely hard to get me to this point. I have to thank my family who's been extremely supportive, specifically my wife, for being my rock. This is an opportunity for what we can do as a country. Today is a message. I hope that everybody is listening to that message. We have to listen to the people in this country. They're suffering. This is our chance to change the direction of our country. And I hope that everybody understands that and listens closely to it.
It's number one on your priority hit list for the constituency.
The first thing is I want to thank each and every one of them. It was amazing opportunity to go into the constituency. I have been welcomed by them. People have told me their stories, what's happening in their families, what's happening in their households. I think it's important that I talk to my team to focus on the priorities that were given to us on the doorstep, which was education, the economy, and healthcare. Those are the priorities of the country. Those are the things that we have to focus on.
What do you think the key factor was for the voters in the constituency?
The key factors is exactly what I said to you. I mean, for me, it was the opportunity to listen to what the issues were of the constituents. People in Bermuda overall have been saying that they have issues, but they did not feel that politicians were listening to them. I had this opportunity to listen, and they told me what their problems were. So now it is up to not just myself that have had the opportunity to be elected today, but all 36 politicians and the Senate to be paying attention to what the community is looking for us to do, and that is working together, as my opponent was saying during this process. We didn't get to this situation by one individual group. We have to, as a community, come together so that we can move this country forward. Division will not make this work.
Interestingly enough, the losses in the 2020 election, the OBA, looking at my math, you've actually regained what you lost in terms of voter share. Obviously, the numbers are much lower, with only about 47-48% of registered voters voting. But if you took it as voter share, that's back up to what you were before 2017. What do you take that to mean?
I think it's a message from the community. They're saying that we want to have change. We need something different from where we've been. And we need to make sure that our politicians are not just listening, but they're going to act on what they've heard.
Will we be able to get a few words with Mr. Fubler?
Yes,
Please. And so, just heard, in some ways, the OBA's regained, at least in terms of voter share, some of what they'd lost in 2020, even a little bit of what they lost in 2017, by about 1%. So what's your response to tonight's result?
Well, first I need to thank my wife for accommodating this endeavor. Very little time to connect with the voters. I think that sounds great. I need to thank the 167 folks that came out and supported me today. It's greatly appreciated. I think this will not be the last time that you see me. I intend to get back out there and meet those that I did not meet in the 6 weeks or so that we've been canvassing in the lead up to this. As Ben mentioned, this is a message from the voters of Smith South that we need to do a better job of listening to them and reacting to their needs, and I believe that my continued involvement in the PLP will help to see that happens. And
in interviews, Ben Smith just now has spoken about this need for collaboration. You spoke about a need for collaboration. How do you see that in the future? Because frankly, it's been a very confrontational kind of political environment. How do you see getting from confrontation to collaboration?
Well, I mean, that continued partnership on both sides, people working towards solving the issues as opposed to looking to, score cheap political points. Hopefully the kind of air that Ben Smith and myself carried through the campaign, trying to keep it focused on the issues and why we felt we were the best for the role, continues in the upcoming general election.
been said some of the ideas that you have may not perhaps match up with the party, specifically immigration and other issues. How do you feel you're going to be able to have some influence on the party? Do you feel that you can?
I sure hope so. I'm still the Chief Technology Officer of the Executive. I'm not planning to disappear into the night, so hopefully you'll see more of me. If the members of the CA branch are willing to have me again, I intend to run whenever the general election is called. I would need to make sure I forgot in my first speech there. Thank you to the team, folks here today, as well as many others who are behind the scenes, helping me to get out and connect with the voters and run this operation. You know, you need many hands involved in having an election. As you mentioned, well, as Gary mentioned, it's a by-election, so 47% of the registered voters turned out. So, I mean, seems like some folks are content with the current state. Hopefully, more of you, when we have a chance to discuss the issues in your homes, feel like you're also ready for change.
What is next politically for you, Mr. Butler?
Well, I mean, I had those proposals like the farmers market, which seemed to resonate with the people I did manage to speak to in their homes and out and about in Smith South. So I'd like to still see that happen. To the small farmers of Smith South or Bermuda in general, if you are interested in engaging in a farmers market here in Smith South, which is lacking one, please do reach out. Misha.pablo@blp.bm.
Collaboration, right?
That's all that collaboration.
Okay, so we've just seen the official results announced. And before I go on, just to be technically correct, Premier Burt has said that he won't run for party leader after his 2 terms. I think I used the word premier interchangeably with that, but the correct thing is he won't, as he said many times, he won't run for party leader. The official results show Ben Smith with 457 votes and Misha Fubler with 167 votes, and a couple of spoiled ballots, and the actual percentage is 73.23% for Mr. Smith. So there we have it. What did you think of his Ben Smith's speech at the end, Dwayne, and of him moving forward?
Well, I think he's hitting there right on the head of being there to do continuous work and collaboration, which I extremely support. Collaboration between the parties, and making sure that we can together work towards workable solutions. And I also want to say really quickly that thank you to Misha Fabler for putting his name forward, because it's always good to see newer faces, slightly younger. I mean, I know his got me by a few years, but he is younger than the average up there. And I think that as somebody who has taken an election loss and kept on ticking, I encourage him to do the same. And I feel like that spirit of collaboration, if we could have it in more of uh, politicians, I think Bermuda will be better off. So I'm looking forward to seeing what my colleague does in constituency 8, and I intend to keep him accountable and working consistently. And I know he will do so, and so will leadership. So it's a great victory for him tonight, returning that voter share, and I think I look forward to seeing great things from him in that particular constituency. And I hope to see Misha Fabler again.
And I know a lot of people, Chris, were really excited about Misha. And I had several people talk to me. They thought he was like a fresh voice, and they were excited and happy to see him run. What do you think his future is with the party?
Misha is PLP, right? Just as Dwayne is the future of the OBA, we have numerous persons who are the future of the PLP. And Misha has, the first thing that Misha said after being rolled out, it says, I want to ensure to keep the campaign clean. I don't want to base any attacks against Ben. I don't want to have any literature with my name attacking the OBA. And that's exactly what Misha asked for, is what he got. And it resonated with the people that he kept his hands clean, right? And he is the person that I would say his ideas, his ideology may not be always line up with everything that the party ideology is. But for anything to grow, you need to have new ideas, right? So Misha is a branch chair. Dwayne knows that. Um, Misha is on the executive as the chief technology officer, and Misha is part of this campaign team. This isn't just Misha's never alone. Misha is part of us. We are part of Misha.
I'm going to give everyone a chance to have one last word, and we're going to start with you, Chris, and then go to Dwayne, Cheryl, and then I'll thank our viewers.
Let the lady go first. I just finished talking.
Okay, Cheryl.
No, you guys go first. All right. Um, it's been an interesting evening. I'm the result is as expected, quite frankly. I'm glad we were able to talk a little bit about other pressing issues hitting the electorate, the people of Bermuda, our island, the economy. And that's really what we need to work on going forward, whether it's which, regardless of who won tonight. Um, so I'm looking forward to continuing the discussion and ensuring that we come to a solution.
Okay, okay, Chris. Now it's your turn.
Well, I would I would say I kind of get jaded when I hear some people say collaboration, because Van himself sat on the Immigration Reform Committee with myself, Renee Meeing, MP Renee Meeing, and then MP Leah Scott. And he knows what was agreed upon and what wasn't agreed upon in that meeting. And the OBA on the whole refused to collaborate. When we as a party, when we as a government invite them to sit in on things, invite them to contribute to things, they don't show up. They didn't show up to anything to do with education reform. And then they go in the press and they say all sorts of negativity about the PLP. They have sent out all these flyers with all this negativity about the PLP. So on one hand, you have good-hearted people like Dwayne who believe in collaboration, but the party machinery is not about collaboration. So, we have to call it for what it is.
Okay, and Dwayne, your final thoughts on the night.
I want to end on a positive, and I believe that the collaboration that the OBA has shown when it comes to supporting legislation that the Progressive Labour Party has gotten correctly, and our members of the House consistently let them know when they have our support. And as MP Famous likes to say, we don't always, politicians are not always at each other's throat. So I think it's a bit disingenuous to say that we don't collaborate on anything. But what I will say is that we as a country in Bermuda right now are facing massive, massive problems with our people being basically accosted by this cost of living. And I think that a lot of times in politics, we get so caught up in the house, and that being the end all be all, that we forget that, there are people who we need to be engaging with. And I think this is the turning point for both parties, as Ben Smith said, to get out there and re-engage with the people, because they are indeed feeling the malaise of both parties. And I think that it's our job as politicians to not only re-energize our supporters, but re-energize Bermuda, right? So I do hope that, as Ben said, both parties take this as a lesson to get onto the doorstep consistently, not just during election. And I will give my kudos to MP Chris Famous in that regard. And I think he's got somebody that's gonna keep his feet to the fire in that seat from us as well, in Jeff Ayala. So I do look forward to seeing us as politicians start to reconnect with the people as a whole and do our best to get as many Bermudians re-engaged in this process as possible, and engaged voters and educated voters in this process.
I just want to say that
Ben Smith.
I just want to say before we sign off tonight, I just want to give a big thank you to both the Progressive Labor Party and the One Bermuda Alliance for allowing you. We sent an invitation out to have representatives from both parties here tonight, so I appreciate that spirit of cooperation to have Senator Dwayne Robinson.
Collaboration, Don. Collaboration.
Collaboration. It's like salivating. And
You did it. You did it, Don.
I told you I was going to work it in there. So, just really appreciate you and the honest, just frank discussion that we had back and forth, and the mostly civil discourse that shows that we can have these kind of discussions for the public to listen to. And of course, Cheryl, always appreciate having you and your Ivy League education on the show, and to add your viewpoints to what's going on in Bermuda. So thank you, Senator Dwayne Robinson. Thank you, MP Chris Famous. Thank you, Professor Cheryl Packwood. Appreciate having you here tonight.
Thank you
Dawn,
for inviting us.
what I think we did some level of injustice to the people of Bermuda in that what Professor Cheryl Packwood was hoping to invigorate into inject into the conversation was some outside of tonight conversation. So what I would suggest is you probably have a reconvening of this panel, and we could let Professor Cheryl Packwood have her more of her say in what we need to do as a country.
Well, that'd be interesting, because is it one of the subjects you're teaching? International law?
I'm teaching public international law and international business transactions.
International business transactions, right? Right. So that's a great suggestion, Chris. And I'll talk with the people who pay my paycheck to see if we can make that happen.
I'm quite sure they'll be willing.
Okay. So on behalf of Burr News, we just really want to thank you for being here. I've been your host, Don Burgess. And as all